My husband, Ethan, told me he was going on a business trip. I watched him pack his suitcase, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach, but I didn't press it. I just gave him a simple nod. Little did I know, his so-called business trip was a trip to the operating room to donate a part of his liver to his first love, Chloe. He went under the knife without telling me, giving a piece of himself to that woman. After the surgery, as he lay writhing in pain, the first person he called was me. His voice was a pathetic mix of wheedling and whining. "Claire, honey." My appendix burst. It hurt so bad. His voice was weak, breathless. "Can you come to the hospital and take care of me? I'm craving your lobster bisque." His words made my stomach churn with nausea, but I forced it down. In a gentle voice, I promised him I would. "Of course, sweetie. I'll arrange a special delivery for you." He grunted in satisfaction on the other end and hung up. The next day, the door to his hospital room was kicked open with a thunderous bang. But it wasn't me who walked in. It was a burly courier, built like a linebacker. With a look of sheer annoyance on his face, the courier strode over and slapped a thick stack of documents onto Ethan's face. "Sign it," the man boomed, his voice rough. "Your wife said, since you already gave away a piece of your liver, what do you need your pride for?" The sudden violence startled Ethan. He stared at the papers scattered across his chest, then at the intimidating man looming over him, his expression one of pure confusion. What is this?" he asked weakly. "Beats me," the courier grumbled. "I'm just the delivery guy. Your wife paid me to bring you these papers and tell you to sign." Ethan fumbled with the documents. As he read the first page, his face drained of all color, turning a ghastly white. At that moment, Chloe, who was sitting by his bed, leaned over and saw the contents. Her expression soured instantly. Both of them looked like they had seen a ghost. My phone screen lit up, displaying the name My Husband. I answered the call. Ethan's weak, wheedling voice came through the speaker. "Claire, I was on my business trip, and I got acute appendicitis. I just got out of surgery." He sounded drained. "It hurts so much, honey. The anesthesia is wearing off, and it feels like the incision is tearing open." I held the phone, my gaze fixed calmly on the coffee table in front of me. Spread across it was a stack of photographs. In the first photo, Ethan and his first love, Chloe, were holding hands as they walked into a private hospital. In the next, they were in hospital gowns, in separate but adjacent rooms. Ethan was gazing through the glass partition with a look of profound devotion. Chloe returned his stare, her eyes brimming with adoration. In the final photo, they were being wheeled into the operating room on parallel gurneys. "An appendectomy?" I thought to myself, a bitter taste in my mouth. "That's strange," I murmured aloud. "Why would two people need to go into the operating room for that? And why would it require removing a third of the donor's liver?" I frowned, pretending to ponder the medical mystery. Just then, Ethan's pathetic voice came through the phone again, underscored by Chloe's soft, breathy coo. "Ethan, don't talk. The doctor said you need to rest." Chloe purred. That voice. I would never forget that voice. I would recognize it even if she were reduced to ashes. She was taunting me, flaunting the fact that my husband was willing to risk his life for her. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I nearly threw up. I took a deep, steadying breath, forcing my voice to sound as sweet as honey when I spoke into the phone. "Oh, you poor thing. How did that happen? Does it hurt terribly?" Hearing my concern, Ethan's spirits seemed to lift. The pain in his voice became more pronounced, more theatrical. "It's killing me, Claire. I'm dreaming of your lobster bisque. The food here is so bland. It's disgusting." He added, "Please come take care of me. I'm so lonely and miserable here." He said it all so matter-of-factly, as if it were my sacred duty. In his mind, I, Claire Thompson, was supposed to be his doormat, obligated to tolerate all his lies and betrayals. I was supposed to be his free caretaker. He had played the hero for his long-lost love, feeling noble and grand, moved by his own sacrifice. And what was I? I was supposed to dutifully cook for him, then rush to the hospital to serve him the conquering hero and his true love. What a fucking joke! "Of course," I said, the words ground out between my teeth. I let out a soft, saccharine laugh. "I'll arrange a special delivery for you right away," I cooed, drawing out the words. "I promise you'll be satisfied. Don't worry, honey. I've got a big surprise for you. It'll be there soon." Ethan grunted in contentment. I could practically picture his smug, pampered expression. "I knew you'd come through for me, Claire. You've always got my back. Hurry up, I'm waiting." He paused, then added, "Oh, and Chloe isn't feeling well either. Could you bring an extra portion of soup for her?" Chloe. He said her name with such casual intimacy. A smile remained plastered on my face. "No problem at all," I said, my voice sweet, even as my heart felt like it had been encased in a block of ice. After hanging up, I didn't head to the kitchen. I walked calmly to the sofa and sat down. Taking out my phone, I opened a courier app. I scrolled through the options until I found the document delivery service. I carefully entered the address: Metropolitan General Hospital, VIP Suite, 1208. Recipient: Mr. Ethan Hayes. After filling in the details, I bit my lip and typed a note in the special instructions field, word by word. Upon arrival, please kick the door open, then throw the documents in the recipient's face. I paused, then continued typing. Then, in the loudest voice you can manage, read the following line: sign it. Your wife said, since you already gave away a piece of your liver, what do you need your pride for? I took a deep breath and added one last instruction: double the fee for exceptional service. Thank you. After confirming the order and paying, I leaned back against the sofa, feeling the tight knot of pressure in my chest finally begin to loosen. But I knew it wasn't enough. I stood up and walked, my steps heavy, into our Scandinavian-style bedroom. Every detail in this room was a product of my love and care, from the soft linen sheets to the breezy curtains, all hand-picked by me. I opened the closet. Ethan's side was packed with designer suits and shirts, all neatly arranged. Most of them were purchased with my annual bonus. I remembered him telling me once, with a look of earnest gravity, "Claire, you know my background. I can't look like I came from nothing in front of my colleagues." Seeing the mix of desperation and desire in his eyes, I believed him without a second thought. I poured my money into soothing his fragile ego. Looking back now, I was such a fool. It was all so laughable. Expressionless, I began pulling his clothes off their hangers. A suit worth thousands of dollars slid to the floor. Hundreds of dollars shirts followed. I ruthlessly yanked everything out: his shoes, his ties, even his underwear, and stuffed them into several large black trash bags. I sealed the bags tightly and dragged their heavy weight to the hallway outside our apartment door. Then, I pulled out my phone and called Mike, the building's maintenance guy. "Hey, Mike. It's Claire from 5B. I have a few bags of old clothes outside my door. Could you take them for recycling?" "Sure thing, Claire," he said. "Be right up." "What do I owe you?" "Nothing," I said flatly. "Just take them." "Are you sure? I can give you a little something." "I'm sure, Mike. Please, just take them." I hung up. Exhausted, I walked back to the living room and sank onto the sofa. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bright and warm, but a chill ran through my body. On instinct, I opened my banking app to check our joint account. My finger trembled slightly as I scrolled through the recent transactions, just as I suspected. A week ago, a single transaction of $50,000 had been withdrawn. I stared at the screen. The recipient was the private hospital. $50,000. That was our down payment for a house in a better school district we had been saving for years to buy. Now, it was the payment for Ethan's grand gesture to his ex. He had used my money, our money, without so much as a word to me. In his mind, my money was his money. What was that phrase? Community property? No, he probably saw me as his personal benevolent fund, obligated to finance his great, tragic love story. Rage trembled through me. I took a deep breath and dialed my best friend, Jess. She was a top divorce attorney. This was her specialty. The phone picked up on the first ring. "Jess, I need a favor," I said, my voice tight. "What's up, Claire? What's wrong?" I gritted my teeth. "Draw me up a divorce agreement, the most brutal, ironclad one you can write." Jess's voice sharpened. "Divorce? What the hell happened?" "And," I continued, "I need you to immediately file a motion to freeze all joint accounts and assets under my name and Ethan Hayes's. Claire, you have to tell me what's going on." "He had an affair," I said, the words like poison on my tongue, "and he fraudulently transferred marital assets. I'll send you the proof." There was a moment of silence on the other end. I could picture Jess, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then, Her voice came back, crisp and professional. Received. Consider it done, Claire. Wait for my good news. I leaned back on the sofa and closed my eyes. Images of Ethan's deceit flashed through my mind. I could almost hear his voice from the hospital, boasting to Chloe. My wife is the most obedient woman you'll ever meet, he'd be saying smugly. She believes anything I tell her. Really? Chloe would giggle. So she'll be here soon? You bet. She's probably at home right now, making my favorite lobster bisque. She'll be here to wait on both of us any minute now. I let out a cold, humorless laugh. Oh yes, Ethan, just you wait. Your good wife's surprise is already on its way. In the VIP suite at Metropolitan General, Ethan lay propped up on his bed, his face pale as a sheet. A sheen of cold sweat covered his forehead, and a dull ache throbbed from his abdomen. But his spirits were high. He kept glancing at the door, a smug smile playing on his lips. The phone call with Claire had gone perfectly. Her voice had been so gentle and loving, like a soothing balm. Any guilt he'd felt about the surgery had evaporated like morning mist. He was already planning it out. When Claire arrived, he'd have her wait on him hand and foot. He'd even have her be nice to Chloe. He could have them both, living in harmony. A man couldn't ask for more. Sitting beside him, Chloe was carefully peeling an apple, her voice as fragile as spun sugar. Ethan, are you sure it's okay to lie to your wife like that? What if she finds out? Won't she be furious? Her words were laced with concern, but her eyes held a glint of triumphant satisfaction. She was goading him, and he fell for it completely. Ethan grabbed her hand, his eyes filled with adoration. Don't worry, she'll never know. Besides, I did this to save your life, Chloe. This is a human life we're talking about. Claire is so kind-hearted. Even if she found out, she would understand. He was lost in his own self-aggrandizing fantasy, completely missing the disdainful curl of Chloe's lip at the mention of the word kind-hearted. Besides, he continued, puffing out his chest, my wife adores me. She's totally wrapped around my finger. She'll be here with the bisque soon, and we can share it. He looked like a child who had just gotten a new toy. Chloe lowered her head shyly. You're so good to me, Ethan. Just as they were basking in the glow of their life-and-death romance, the door to the room exploded inward with a deafening bang. The expensive, solid wood door, flung open by a powerful kick, slammed against the wall, rattling the entire frame. The serene atmosphere of the private suite was shattered. The noise was so loud it seemed to startle the entire floor. Ethan and Chloe both jumped, their heads snapping towards the door. They were expecting to see Claire, holding a thermos, her face etched with worry. But the figure framed in the doorway was not Claire. It was a mountain of a man, at least 6'4", with muscles bulging from under the thin fabric of his courier service vest. The man scanned the room, his eyes landing on Ethan. He strode forward, each step heavy and deliberate. Everyone watched in stunned silence as he reached the bedside, lifted the thick sheaf of papers he was holding, and slapped it hard across Ethan's face. The pages scattered across the bed. On the top sheet, in bold black letters, were 2 words, divorce agreement. Sign it, the courier boomed, his voice like a thunderclap in the quiet room. Then, with professional diligence, he began to recite the line from his instructions, his voice ringing with theatrical force. Your wife said, since you already gave away a piece of your liver, what do you need your pride for? Boom. Ethan's mind went blank. He stared in disbelief at the papers on his blanket, then looked up at the menacing courier. Divorce agreement? Gave away your liver? How did she know? Shame, rage, and shock crashed over him all at once. His mind was a chaotic mess. What the hell are you talking about? Ethan shrieked, struggling to sit up. The sudden movement pulled violently at his long abdominal incision. A searing, blinding pain shot through him. He let out a choked gasp, his brow furrowed in agony. He felt a warm, wet sensation spreading rapidly across his abdomen. He looked down. A dark red stain was blooming on his white hospital gown, spreading quickly onto the sheets beneath him. Oh God, he thought in a panic. The stitches tore open. Ah! Chloe let out a piercing shriek. She pointed a trembling finger at the courier. What are you doing? He just had surgery. Are you trying to kill him? The courier shot her a look of utter contempt. He can survive surgery, but can't keep it in his pants? He sneered. Then, raising his voice for all to hear, he added, Lady, You took the man's organ. Don't you dare play the victim now." His voice echoed down the hall, where a crowd of curious patients and family members had already gathered. They craned their necks, their eyes wide with excitement, and began to whisper among themselves. "Oh my God! He gave his liver to his mistress?" An older woman gasped. "Tisk, tisk. These men will do anything for the woman on the side. They don't even care about their own lives," a man said, shaking his head. "Serves him right. You go, girl. The wife is a genius," a younger woman cheered quietly. The murmurs were like 1,000 tiny knives stabbing into Ethan's ears. His face turned a deep, mottled purple, and veins bulged on his forehead. He trembled with a mixture of pain and humiliation, his hands clenched into fists. Ignoring the bleeding from his wound, he frantically fumbled on the bedside table for his phone. He found it and shakily dialed my number. The call connected almost instantly. "Claire Thompson, what is the meaning of this?" he roared into the phone. "Why did you send someone to make a scene?" His voice was distorted with pain and fury. On my end, I could hear his ragged, heavy breathing, mixed with the frantic shouts of nurses in the background. I couldn't help but laugh. My voice was calm, as if I were discussing the weather. "I was just curious, Ethan. Since when does an appendectomy require the removal of 1/3 of a man's liver? You're a true hero. Time Magazine's Person of the Year has nothing on you." The other end of the line went dead silent. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. All his accusations and questions died on his lips. He knew that I knew everything. After a few seconds of heavy silence, he tried to use his twisted, self-serving logic to win me over. "Claire, let me explain. I was saving a life. Chloe was dying. It was a human life." "A human life," I repeated mechanically. The irony was suffocating. "And what about the $50,000 you took from our account? Was that not our money?" "That was the inheritance my parents left me, money I earned with my own blood and sweat." "You took my money to save your white moonlight, and now you expect me to come and serve you both? Ethan, who the hell do you think you are?" My voice was quiet, but each word landed like a sledgehammer. "Wait for the summons from my lawyer, Ethan. We're done." I hung up without another word and immediately blocked his number. The hospital room was a scene of chaos. Nurses and doctors swarmed around Ethan, rushing him off for an emergency procedure to clean and restitch his wound. Chloe stood frozen in place, her eyes fixed on the divorce agreement lying on the floor. Her gaze scanned the section on asset division. The husband voluntarily forfeits all claims to marital property and will leave the marriage with no assets. The color drained from her face. Her carefully constructed facade of a fragile, innocent damsel shattered, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated horror. The pain of the second suturing was far worse than the first surgery. Ethan lay in bed, drenched in a cold sweat, his body trembling uncontrollably. He felt as weak as a newborn kitten. He couldn't understand how everything had gone so wrong. How could the Claire who had once worshipped him, who had treated him as the center of her universe, become so cold and ruthless? He tried to message me on social media. Blocked. He sent a text. Undelivered. He tried a voice call. The user is not available. He had been completely cut off. After the public humiliation by the courier, Chloe's visits became less and less frequent. At first, she still brought him soup and acted attentive. But soon she started making excuses, claiming her own body needed to recover. Eventually, he was lucky to see her once every 3 days. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt truly alone. When his bandages needed changing, he couldn't sit up on his own. When he was thirsty, there was no one to pour him a glass of water. The man in the next bed had a wife and son who took turns caring for him, feeding him, and keeping him company. Ethan's side of the room was cold and empty. A sour, suffocating feeling settled in his chest. In desperation, he remembered his last resort, his mother. He called her, his voice cracking with emotion as he spun a heavily edited tale of woe. He painted himself as a pitiable victim, abandoned by a heartless wife. He conveniently left out any mention of the liver donation or Chloe. "Mom, I'm dying," he sobbed. "Claire is divorcing me. She won't even take care of me. I just had a simple appendectomy, and she's abandoning me. She's so cruel." On the other end of the line, my mother-in-law heard the words dying and divorce and immediately exploded. The next morning, my doorbell began ringing incessantly, the sharp, frantic chimes echoing through the apartment. I went to the door and peered through the peephole. My formidable mother-in-law stood at the front, her face a mask of fury. Behind her was her posse, a gaggle of aunts and cousins, all looking ready for a fight. They had their arms crossed, their eyes narrowed, and their expressions were hostile. I had been expecting this. I took a deep breath and stayed put. Seeing that I wasn't opening the door, my mother-in-law began to scream and beat her fists against it. "Claire Thompson, you heartless witch! Get out here!" Her shrill voice pierced the wood. "My son is lying in a hospital bed, and you want to divorce him? Are you even human? You barren hen! Marrying you was the worst luck our family has ever had." Her shrieking soon attracted the attention of my neighbors, who began poking their heads out of their doors. Seeing she had an audience, my mother-in-law escalated her performance. She plopped down on the floor and began wailing, slapping her thighs for emphasis. "There's no justice in this world. My poor son works so hard in this city, and this is how his wife treats him when he's sick. Everyone, come and judge for yourselves. What kind of woman files for divorce when her husband is ill?" "She's trying to kill my son!" she cried, fat tears rolling down her cheeks. The neighbors, unaware of the full story, began to look at my door with expressions of disapproval. Watching her theatrical display on my security camera feed, I decided it was time. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The wailing stopped instantly. Every eye in the hallway swiveled to me. I stood in the doorway, empty-handed except for 2 items. In my left hand, I held a small megaphone. In my right, I held a neatly printed medical report. I clicked the megaphone on, cleared my throat, and my voice, amplified, boomed down the hallway. "Good morning, neighbors. Sorry to disturb you, but I'd like to invite you all to the premiere of this year's most dramatic, real-life soap opera." My mother-in-law stared, stunned. This was not the reaction she had anticipated. She scrambled up from the floor, pointed a finger at my nose, and opened her mouth to scream. I didn't give her the chance. I aimed the megaphone directly at her. "Ma'am, you said your son is sick, didn't you? Do you have any idea what his illness is?" The question caught her off guard. It's appendicitis, isn't it?" she stammered. I let out a cold laugh and held up the report. "Then please, explain to me which appendectomy requires a surgeon to remove 1/3 of your son's liver?" "What?" My mother-in-law's face went white, her eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Behind her, the aunts and cousins gasped. "Cut out his liver?" one of them whispered, covering her mouth. "Impossible! You're lying!" my mother-in-law shrieked, her voice cracking. I strode forward and shoved the report in her face, pointing a finger at the diagnosis and surgical record. "Read it yourself," I said, my voice hard as steel. "Partial hepatectomy. Subject, Ethan Hayes. Your son, to save his precious first love, secretly went behind my back and donated his healthy liver." My voice rose with every word. Not only did he give away his liver, he took the $50,000 I had saved for a down payment on a house and used it to pay for that woman's medical bills. My hands were shaking with rage. And now that he's lying in a hospital bed and his little girlfriend has decided he's a burden and left him high and dry, he remembers he has a wife? What does he want? For me to go to the hospital and wait on the 2 of them, the great adulterous couple? That kind of blessing, I said, looking her dead in the eye. "I'll leave for you. Do you want it?" My words, amplified by the megaphone, echoed down the silent hallway. The sheer volume of information was staggering. Everyone was frozen, staring in stunned silence. My mother-in-law snatched the report from my hand, her eyes frantically scanning the words, "partial hepatectomy." Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. I wasn't finished. I turned the megaphone back to the audience. For those of you who don't know, let me educate you on the side effects of liver donation. The donor's immune system is severely compromised. They live in a state of chronic weakness. They can't do any heavy lifting. The slightest exertion leaves them exhausted. Their digestive system is a wreck, and they can become irritable and prone to violent mood swings. It can even shorten their lifespan. I paused for effect. To put it simply, your precious pride and joy son is now a walking pharmacy who will need to be cared for the rest of his life. He is, for all intents and purposes, a cripple. The word cripple was the final blow. I knew what she valued most in her son, his ability to earn money, to provide for her in her old age, to carry on the family name. A sickly invalid was worthless to her. Her face, already pale, turned the color of ash. I delivered the coup de grace. Oh, and I almost forgot to tell you. I drew out the words, my eyes locked on hers. Your son, in his infinite wisdom, also took out a second mortgage on our apartment to get more money for his mistress. I paused. My apartment, by the way, the one I owned before we were married. This, of course, was a lie. The apartment was solely in my name. He couldn't have mortgaged it. But I wanted to see her reaction. At the words second mortgage, her eyes went wide with terror. She swayed on her feet, and her eyes rolled back in her head. She would have collapsed if her relatives hadn't caught her. What are we going to do? One of the aunts shrieked. The house is gone. Where will we live? That witch! Another yelled, stomping her foot. She stole my nephew's money, took his liver, and now she's taken his home. We can't let her get away with this. Let's go find that woman and get the money back. In an instant, the lynch mob that had been directed at me turned on a new target. My mother-in-law, revived by pure fury, shoved her relatives aside, her eyes burning with rage. With a wave of her arm, she led her troops away from my door, a formidable army marching toward the hospital. I watched them go, a grim smile on my face. You wanted your mother to put me in my place, Ethan? Well, enjoy the maternal love she's about to shower on you. The real show is just beginning. A short while later, the VIP suite at the hospital erupted. My mother-in-law, like an enraged lioness, kicked open the door to Ethan's room. Chloe, who was sitting by the bed, didn't even have time to react before the older woman lunged at her, grabbing a fistful of her hair. You shameless, home-wrecking tramp, she screamed, her voice raw with fury. She yanked Chloe's head back, her farmer-strong hands like a vice. Chloe cried out in pain as my mother-in-law began slapping her across the face, a relentless barrage of blows. Give me back my son's liver, and give us back our money. Chloe's face was already swelling, tears streaming from her eyes. She tried to pry the woman's hands off, sobbing, Ma'am, please, stop. You've ruined my son! I'm going to kill you today! My mother-in-law shrieked, raising her hand again. Beaten and terrified, Chloe scrambled away, trying to hide behind Ethan's bed. In her panic, she stumbled and slammed directly into Ethan's abdomen. Ah! A gut-wrenching scream tore from Ethan's throat. His freshly stitched wound had been struck again. Blood immediately began to soak through his bandages, staining his gown a horrifying bright red. He went into convulsions from the pain, sweat pouring down his face. Mom, stop, he wheezed, but his voice was lost in the cacophony of his mother's rage and Chloe's hysterical screams. Seeing her son bleeding, my mother-in-law finally let go of Chloe, her anger momentarily replaced by shock. But it quickly returned, now directed at her son. You useless fool, she shrieked, beating her own chest. You gave away your liver for this whore. And you mortgaged the house. Where is the money? Where is it? Ethan was in too much pain to speak. Chloe, her hair a mess and her face covered in red handprints, scrambled to her feet. Ma'am, you've misunderstood. I didn't— My mother-in-law whirled on her. Then where did my son's liver go? Where did the $50,000 go? By now, a large crowd had gathered at the door, some even filming the scene with their phones. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching the drama unfold. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jess. Evidence secured. Motion to freeze assets has been filed. Where are you? Need me to pick you up? I texted back. At the hospital. Watching the show. In the room, my mother-in-law was still screaming. You tell me right now, did you give that $50,000 to this witch? Ethan, weak and gasping, opened his eyes and saw me standing in the doorway. Our eyes met. His were filled with a desperate plea. I looked away, my face a mask of indifference. Mom, Ethan finally managed to gasp. The money, I lent it to Chloe. For her treatment. She'll pay it back. Pay it back? His mother scoffed. With what? Look at her. Chloe's face flushed. She bit her lip and said, her voice trembling but defiant, Ma'am, don't look down on me. My family is having a hard time right now, but I have a job. I can pay it back slowly. Slowly? My mother-in-law shrieked. My son is half a man because of you. Don't you understand? He's a cripple now. How is he supposed to work? How is he supposed to earn money? How is he supposed to support a family? Each question was a hammer blow to Chloe. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, panic, calculation, and a clear, unmistakable flash of disgust. Chloe's voice faltered. I'll take care of him. Take care of him? My mother-in-law laughed hysterically. With what? With my son's money? Ethan watched the scene, his heart sinking into a black pit of despair. He had never seen his mother so unhinged, or Chloe so pathetic, and Chloe's promise to take care of him had sounded so hollow, so forced. Suddenly, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the chaos. What's all this noise? This is a hospital. 2 police officers were standing in the doorway. Who called the police? One of them asked. I raised my hand. I did. Every head in the room turned to me. Ethan stared, his eyes wide. Chloe went even paler. My mother-in-law looked utterly bewildered. Ma'am, what's the situation? The officer asked me. Officer, I said calmly, I'm reporting 2 crimes. First, the theft of $50,000 from a joint marital account, transferred without my consent. Second, assault. That woman, I said, pointing at Chloe, deliberately slammed into my husband's abdomen, causing his surgical wound to reopen. Chloe panicked. I didn't. It was an accident. She pushed me. Officer, my mother-in-law interjected, I want to file a report. This woman scammed my son out of his money and his liver. Arrest her. The scene descended back into chaos. One at a time, the officer said firmly, pointing at me. You first. Explain the situation. I took a folder from my purse. Here are the bank records showing the $50,000 transfer from our joint account to this hospital, made without my knowledge or consent. And here is the hospital's receipt, with Chloe Vance listed as the recipient. I then took out my phone. I also have a video of what just transpired in this room. It clearly shows Miss Vance deliberately ramming into my husband's abdomen. The officer watched the video. In slow motion, Chloe's movement looked undeniably intentional. He turned to her. Miss Vance, do you have anything to say? I didn't mean to, she stammered, trembling. They were attacking me. The officer then looked at my mother-in-law. Ma'am, regarding the money, that's a civil matter concerning marital assets. One spouse cannot unilaterally dispose of such a large sum. He then turned to Ethan. Mr. Hayes, can you clarify what happened? Ethan lay on the bed, his face as white as the sheets. The pain in his abdomen was excruciating, but the pain in his heart was worse. He looked at the chaos, at his mother's shrieking, at Chloe's desperate denials, and at my cold, implacable calm. He suddenly realized he had lost far more than just a piece of his liver. The money, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I gave it to Chloe voluntarily. She needed a transplant. So, you donated your liver? The officer's expression grew serious. Mr. Hayes, are you aware that living organ donation is subject to strict legal and medical protocols? Are you a blood relative of Miss Vance? Ethan was silent. Under federal law, the officer said slowly, living organ donation is typically restricted to relatives or, in some cases, established emotional relationships, like spouses. Which category do you 2 fall under? The room was silent. Chloe's face was now completely devoid of color. She knew the regulations, but she had assumed that with enough money, the hospital would look the other way. Officer, I spoke again. I suspect this may involve illegal organ trafficking. I demand a full investigation. No, Chloe shrieked. There was no sale. Ethan did it voluntarily. Voluntarily? I scoffed. Voluntary doesn't override the law. Was your donation legally sanctioned? Did the hospital follow proper screening procedures? Miss Vance, I think you have some explaining to do. Chloe was speechless. The officers, realizing the gravity of the situation, exchanged a look. We'll need to investigate this further. Miss Vance, you'll have to come with us to the station to answer some questions. Mr. Hayes, once you're medically stable, we'll need a statement from you as well. He looked at me. Ma'am, your evidence is very helpful. We'll need you to cooperate with our investigation. I will, I said. As Chloe was led away by the police, she looked back at Ethan. There was no love in her eyes, no gratitude, only fear and resentment. My mother-in-law tried to cause more trouble but was sternly warned by the police to stop. The room was finally quiet, filled only with the sound of Ethan's ragged breathing. After the doctors had patched him up for a third time, we were alone. Ethan looked at me, his eyes a mix of pain and confusion. "Claire, do you hate me this much?" I sat in the chair by his bed. "I don't hate you, Ethan," I said calmly. "I just don't love you anymore. But 5 years. For 5 years, I loved you like a fool. I believed in you. I supported you. And what was the result? I cut him off. You were willing to sacrifice our marriage, our future, and even your own health for another woman. I was just trying to save a life. So my life, my happiness, is worthless?" My voice was still steady, but each word was a needle. "Do you have any idea of the risks of liver donation, Ethan? The potential complications? The fact that it could shorten your life?" He said nothing. "You didn't know, or you didn't care," I continued, "because in your heart, Chloe's life was more important than my happiness, more important than our marriage, and more important than your own damn life. It's not like that. Then what is it like?" I looked him straight in the eye. "You lied to me, stole our money, and risked your life for her. And then, your first thought was to have me come and wait on the both of you. Ethan, if that's not loving her more than anything, I don't know what is." He couldn't argue. You know, my voice finally trembled with a hint of emotion. "The most heartbreaking part wasn't that you donated your liver to her. It was your attitude afterward. You expected me to understand, to support you, to be some kind of saint, and forgive everything. You even wanted me to take care of her." I let out a bitter laugh. "I'm a person, Ethan. I feel pain. My heart can break. I can feel despair." Tears finally streamed down his face. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I know I was wrong. Please just give me one more chance." "It's too late," I said, standing up. "The moment you lay down on that operating table, we were over." I walked to the door and looked back at him one last time. "I've already signed the divorce papers. I've packed up your things. You can get them from your mother. This apartment is my premarital property. I expect you to be out by the end of the week." I added one final thing. "As for the $50,000 and your medical expenses, my lawyer will be in touch. If you don't want to go to jail, I suggest you cooperate." Then I opened the door and walked out, leaving the man I once loved and the wreckage of our past behind me. The hallway was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting dappled patterns on the floor. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, the heavy stone that had been sitting on my chest was finally gone. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized smoothly. Ethan didn't fight it. He signed the agreement, effectively leaving the marriage with nothing. Chloe's family managed to scrape together $30,000 to pay back part of the money. Ethan agreed to have his wages garnished for the next 3 years to cover the remaining $20,000. The investigation into the organ donation revealed procedural violations on the hospital's part. The administrators involved were disciplined, but without proof of a monetary transaction, Ethan and Chloe avoided criminal charges. That didn't mean they escaped their fate. Chloe's transplant was not a complete success. She suffered from severe rejection issues and was now dependent on a lifetime of expensive anti-rejection medication that her family could not afford. Ethan's health deteriorated rapidly. His compromised immune system meant he was constantly sick. His digestive system was a mess. Worst of all, his moods became volatile, swinging between deep depression and explosive rage. He lost his job. No company wanted an employee on permanent medical leave. He moved back to his hometown to live with his mother. The once ambitious and vibrant man was now a chronic invalid, dependent on her care. At first, my former mother-in-law tended to him, but her patience soon wore thin. The endless medical bills and the sight of her once promising son, now a shell of his former self, filled her with resentment. Their home, which was once filled with her bragging about her successful son, was now filled with bitter arguments and the suffocating air of regret. I heard about all of this from mutual acquaintances, but it felt like a story about strangers. My life, on the other hand, had just begun.